Welcome to another Q&A session exclusive to the entrepreneur growth community here on Facebook. I'm Faisal Karmali. Today we are joined by Elizabeth MacRae. She is the president at Commercial Ventures. She helps business owners buy and sell businesses. And today I wanted to talk to her about the process of buying a business. This might be a big opportunity for you business owners if you're already in a business and you want to acquire another one, or if you're just starting out and you want to buy a business. Here's all the ideas, tips, and advice for you. Elizabeth, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Faisal.
There's a very interesting buzz happening in the middle of a pandemic, and part of that is individuals are seeing that maybe the employment side might not be worthwhile, that maybe the self-employment or entrepreneurship side is something they want to aspire to, or there are business owners today who are basically saying, I can get more of a market growth or a reach within my industry if I just bought another business. And so we got to bring experts on here, and so I'm glad that you're here. So let's start off with the first part of it is people who are looking at buying a business. What should they first look at when they're saying, okay, now they're ready to look at it buying a business?
Yeah, and it all starts down with the motivation of the buyer. What are their goals and outcomes? What do they want to achieve with acquiring a business? If you're an individual buyer, that's how we categorize, individuals who are potentially looking for a career pivot, career change. What are your motivations for buying a business, and getting really clear on what those are. Same goes if you're an existing business and you're looking to grow through acquisition. Being very clear about the parameters and the expectations that you have for going down this path. It sets the foundation of your entire search, how you'll go about it, and what you'll ultimately uncover in your search journey is really getting crystal clear on what you're looking for and really understanding the process of how it works.
What are some of the motivations you hear from your customers and clients?
It's across the board. We have a lot of people who, especially in Alberta in the last few years, coming out of oil and gas, maybe their situation has changed. More recently in the pandemic, people are relooking at their lives and their lifestyles, their career choices. Buying an existing business is a way to make a significant career pivot, own something that is yours. So you're building equity in it yourself. And you don't, for someone who's mid-career and maybe has mouths to feed, they don't have to necessarily go back to school and restart in a new profession. Buying a business is another segue into something different, something unique. And for existing businesses, it's looking to grow down this path. It's a significant growth strategy.
Liz, I've been a guy who's started from the ground up, a brand new business. I'm not saying I created something or an innovator, but I'm saying I've took what's out there and made it better. And so that's been but I started from zero customers and I built my business up that way. And all the ventures that I've been involved in, it's been from zero up. It's never really been, I bought an existing business that gives me cash flow right off the get-go. What are the benefits of owning a business right out of the gate that's already established? Because I'm hearing today that there's a lot of people saying, let me get out of the job world and get into the business owner world, but I can't, diminish a lot of my cash flow because I've got bills to pay as well. That's one benefit I can see. Are there any other benefits of owning an existing business versus starting your own from fresh?
Yep, absolutely. So and a lot of our buyers are always looking at it in that way. Do I start a business or am I going to go out and buy one? And even if they have an idea of where they think, I'm going to start this business and this is my golden ticket idea that I'm going to pursue, there's another avenue to look at it is buying a business and buy and adapt, because you're not starting from zero. And looking at valuation metrics as well, if you can find a good business that's got rolling cash flow and it's considered a going concern, there's the cash flow there to pay the debt servicing on the loan, where you're borrowing from a financial institution often, and the profit from the business actually pays for that loan. You're just putting in the down payment. The turnaround time to pay down that purchase price, it's different than a mortgage. A mortgage you amortize over 25, 30 years. A business is usually financed over a shorter period of time. So for that reason, it's an investment strategy. And we see people pay off businesses in 2 or 3 years, sometimes 5 or 7 years, but it's much shorter than a mortgage. So that's another reason as well. If you need a living wage, and you can't just go back to zero from a startup. That living wage, previously the existing owner was taking that living wage, and as a buyer, you're going to get in and buying a certain size of business, you're typically going to get in and be the owner operator of that business. You're going to draw that living wage. That's another reason. Existing suppliers and contracts in place, trained staff that know how to run the business, they know the industry. You're getting a skilled workforce. Sometimes grandfathered pricing from suppliers. If you enter the business and you're a startup, sometimes you can't compete against existing businesses because their margins are much, much better than yours, because you have to build those relationships and those volume with suppliers. So that's one reason from a supplier standpoint. Contracts being in place with customers. You've got people coming in the door, or revenue coming in the door from day one. As a buyer, you're looking at the foundation of this business that's been built before you, and how are you going to take that forward? How are you going to grow it from the point of the founder or the previous owner? What did they do with the business, and where can you bring your skill set and your talents and your background to take this beyond? We hear from a lot of business owners that if they were the founder, that they've grown a business to a certain point, and some of them feel that now it's almost out of their realm of knowledge. They feel, I feel like someone else can take this business to the next level, and I don't feel like I have the skill set to do that. We hear that very commonly from business owners that are ready to exit or turn their business over to someone else.
One part of what's made me successful in my ventures has been finding businesses at what I would call the wrong time. During a pandemic, during an economic crisis, during a major market crash, whatever it may be, I start buying businesses at low multiples or valuation. It just makes it better for me, but it's also a very challenging time. We are in the middle of a pandemic that's not in our control, meaning from an economic perspective. It is literally 3 weeks by 3 weeks, and the government tells us what we can and cannot do. I call this the accordion economy. We open, we close, we open, we close. And that causes a bit of anxiety for business owners who are looking to purchase a brand new business to start off, or acquire another business to get better economies of scale. In valuations today, from the businesses that you're seeing for sale, are businesses asking for a lot more than they should be today? Are the pricing too high? Because when I start seeing some companies out there for sale and they're reaching out to me saying, do you want to buy my business? They are asking for 4 or 5 times the price of revenue, 3, 4, 5 times their earnings. And I'm like, we're in a pandemic. There's no way that this can work out from my perspective. How about yours?
Mm-hmm.
Liz, what do you think? Is the valuation of businesses, or what business owners want for you to buy their business, overpriced?
That's a hot topic right now for sure, Faisal. And there's a number of different ways to look at it. A business owner is concerned about leaving money on the table. If they want a quick sale, if it's a fire sale, they do your homework, work with the professionals who are going to price you appropriately to move it. If it's, you're always looking at your tangible assets and then your intangible assets beyond that. And then there's the goodwill. The goodwill is, that's the subjective nature of goodwill and what it can capture. And you always have, like, from the business owner's perspective, you have to understand how a buyer's going to look at it and how they're going to finance this, because majority of the time, a buyer is looking for institutional financing, and the banks are getting more critical of the loans that they're willing to give, and business owners need to be aware of that more than ever. And being open-minded, both parties. This is not buying a house. You're not getting 100% of cash on close for the negotiated price. There's multiple tiered scenarios of how to structure a deal. And a lot of people who, maybe negotiating with a buyer or a seller who are not, maybe they're doing it themselves and they may not have the advisory support behind them. They may not be using all the cards in the deck. And you really have to be aware of all the cards in the deck and all the tools that you have to play in negotiations. So what we're seeing more than ever before, I'd say, is a more of a reliance on vendor financing or an earnout, which is an earnout being a royalty that a seller receives on future profit. Because especially, there's a pandemic, but also Alberta's been in, a struggling economy for some time now. And what we saw with business owners that were coming up on retirement is there was less pivoting and less investing in technology over the last few years. So what happens then is that there's a decline in revenue for a number of different reasons. And when engaging buyers with declining revenue, you have to really be able to defend that 4 or 5 times asking price. Where is your defense in that? And, have you had a valuation? What did those metrics look like? Can you defend what you're asking for? And why should someone pay it? You really have to come to the table with those value driver factors.
I find that buying a business can be very emotive. There's reasons why individuals buy businesses. Some of it is to have that financial independence, let's call it. They can be autonomous in their own world. And when they get the emotional side in front of it, they may be paying for a business that might be overpriced. So let's talk about, how does someone know what the true value of a business purely from a rational perspective? And then you're gonna, you can always think you can do better when you buy a business than what it really is. Most people don't buy a business thing, is they're just gonna ride it out and hopefully it stays the same. So if you think you're going to be able to add value, you have that in your mind, but you don't want to overpay for that. And you're looking at this business. So how do you determine what a valuation is? Because you guys do a lot of business valuations. What's some of the things that business owners should be aware of when they're going through financials, when they're trying to learn about this stuff? What should they look for?
Yeah, I don't personally do a lot of valuations, but I'm very aware of the negotiation factors and the structuring that goes into a deal. That's kind of where I see things. And so, yeah, that's a really good question. Because value is one thing, and it can come down to how many buyers are at the table and where those other buyers are. So, for example, if I'm looking at a business in a specific industry and the other buyers at the table, maybe they're strategic buyers, which means they're an existing company that's already in that industry. When we're up against different types of buyers and somebody else can move faster than I can, you really got to know what you're looking at. You've got to know the process. You've got to know what your motivation is, and really, can I bring more value to this company? Being aware of the numbers and the process, because if you don't understand the process, then if there's multiple buyers at the table and somebody else can move faster than you can because they know how to write an offer and they know how to do due diligence faster, you're going to lose out. And depending on how a business comes to market, if they're working with an M&A firm or a brokerage, there are a number of buyers already at the table, because if you're seeing it, so are other people. And so if those people are more aware of the process, they're going to move faster. So when it comes down to what, as a buyer, how am I valuing this company? To me, is it more valuable in my hands? How did the seller value the company originally? How am I perceiving or challenging their value? Am I going to go out and get a valuation done? If they haven't, or I'm challenging their value, am I going to get a valuation done? I was in a call with a business owner yesterday, and they had done a valuation a few years ago. They chose their asking price, they went to market, and the buyer came in, they negotiated a letter of intent, and they secured exclusivity, so the seller wasn't taking it to market anymore. They at least had made sure that they were the only person at the table, the buyer did, at this point. And the buyer went out and brought in a chartered business valuator. So now you've got two different valuations, and they, the business valuator who came in, the valuation came in at 50% of the buyer's asking price, of the
Wow.
seller's asking price. So now here you are, the buyer's still got exclusivity, and the buyer needs to decide, am I willing to come up because I want this business? Like, how badly do I want this business? Can I make it a go? And the seller said, absolutely no. We'll take it back to market. If you're not willing to pay us what we want, we'll take it back to market. So it's an art. It's not a science. It's not like, here's a valuation and this is the value and this is what everybody's going to pay. If you can get multiple buyers to the table and you're the seller, how do you drive that value? How do you defend your value, but also drive the price from the seller's perspective? They want the best price, so they're gonna drive an auction, and that's where, if it's a business of a certain size and you're working with a firm that specializes in having these auctions, you can get more than a valuation. So it can come down to a number of different factors: how many buyers are at the table, what size of the market you're in, how in demand is your company. Some valuations are totally out to lunch, and a company can get a much higher multiple. Market, size of the company plays a factor.
Do you find there's a high demand to buy businesses right now because of this economic situation that we're in?
I would say the market's very active. There's a lot of buyers and there are a lot of sellers. Are they making deals happen? I've talked to a lot of people in the business brokerage industry, and I'm connected with a number of associations throughout North America. And, everybody said, from about March till June, things just kind of shut down. And then people started to come out of the woodwork and say, pandemic or no pandemic, I'm going to sell my business because I'm ready. Or, like so many people right now, they were reevaluating what's most important. Their time, and if you spend a lot of time in your business and you really value spending more time with family, this has shifted a lot of people's perspective. So we're seeing more people selling for different reasons, not necessarily just retirement. We're seeing people buy for different reasons. Definitely seeing more flexibility in how deals are getting structured, I would say. Are we seeing things fly off the shelf? It's supply and demand sometimes, same as anything. The buyers are there. One thing I've heard from a broker recently was that it's very difficult to deal with landlords, and the lenders right now is getting much more challenging than it ever has been before.
That was going to be my next question, is financing. What are the different ways that financing can be done to purchase a business? You mentioned something like vendor financing. You mentioned earnouts. Maybe go into some details about those two, and then what other ways that individuals can purchase a business. What kind of financing is available?
Yeah, so it tends to be, in a business acquisition, it tends to be a tiered approach. So often, the buying party comes in with a portion of the purchase price. There's a third-party lender or one of the traditional financial institutions. Sometimes it's stacked. Sometimes institutions stack financing together. And then usually if there's a gap between a buyer and a seller's expectations, that's where sometimes it can get bridged by vendor financing, which is the seller directly agrees to receive proceeds of the purchase for the business over a period of time or based on different milestones and criteria. So, for example, a vendor take back where a portion of the sale is, maybe it's similar to a fixed loan, where 3 years at such and such percent interest for this portion of the sale price is common. An earnout is different. It's based on performance, and it could be receiving a percentage of future revenue. It could be gross revenue, or it could be a percentage of net. I had this conversation with a business owner yesterday. The buyer was saying, well, we'll give you 25% of EBITDA at year end. And we had the conversation, well, then you have less control over how they spend their money and how they price their products. And this was in the construction industry. So, sending your quoter out, how familiar are they with the industry and quoting jobs? That margin is going to impact how much you receive. So we had the conversation of, reduce the royalty, the percentage you'd receive, and apply it to gross revenue, because then the seller was at less risk. But again, they're going to have to go back to the table and negotiate that.
I find it so fascinating when it comes to stuff like this. This is really my wheelhouse for sure. When it comes to, I've told many business owners, and I say this over and over again on my entire platform, to really know your competition, know what's out there, know who you're competing with within exactly your industry and other industry disruptors, because they could be coming in. And best example would have been Uber to the taxi business. No one saw them coming, at least publicly, for a while, and then they came in, and that caused a whole bunch of upheaval. So those are some disruptors out there. If you're in an industry and you wanna kind of just buy out some of that competition, because it might be worthwhile. You're hearing rumors they're not doing so well. And let me give you an example. I've been talking to a lot of people in the apparel business. So we're talking fashion, suits, clothing, haven't done so well in this pandemic, and a lot of businesses are going to be shutting down or walking away. And so there's an opportunity for business owners to go to their competition and maybe make an offer. How do you do that? What's the process? If I wanted to buy my competition, how do I go through that process? What's the step by steps that I should be looking for?
There's two ways to do it. And it can also play into, what is your relationship with your competitors? Because sometimes, people say, I will sell to so many different categories of people, but I will not sell to this person,
Okay.
So sometimes it's just a pre-existing relationship factor. So the first way is just pick up the phone and say, hey, we're looking to make some acquisitions. Would you ever sell? If the relationship isn't there, or if you don't want to disclose that you're the one buying, if I'm the business that's looking to acquire, bringing in a third party who can create a bit of a teaser on the buyer, essentially. And that's, outlining the buyer's criteria. So not just going to companies blindly, because they might not meet your criteria. And if they don't meet your criteria and you have to go, you're really not what I was looking for, then it can get awkward, and, it can damage a relationship if there was one there before. So the other way to do it is, outline the search criteria. It could be, gross revenue, milestones, or putting those things in a box, this much profit, this much margins, this much gross revenue in the company, and having someone else go to that target company and say, hey, we have a buyer. They're interested in looking at you. Here's their search criteria. Would you be willing to have a conversation? And then that third party sort of gets the easy yes or no, or yes, I'd be willing to have a conversation. Let's sign an NDA. And then that third party sort of maintains confidentiality for both parties to a certain point, and then an introduction's made. And that third party can also, control some of the information that's shared between the parties up to a certain disclosure point. So that's another way to do it, is bring in a third party.
It's very interesting what happens in the private businesses and so forth on this, because it's fascinating how one year you're a certain size and the next year you buy out another business to grow your size, and no one saw that coming. And I love the drama behind the acquiring of businesses and so forth. But what I find with business owners that are looking into this is that they're not properly prepared because they don't have a team of professionals. So here's my next question. What team of professionals should you have when you're looking at buying a business?
Great question. We recommend definitely your commercial lawyer who has experience in transactions. They've really got to know what they're doing. They have to do this a lot because, working with a lawyer that does this maybe once or twice a year is very different than working with a lawyer that does this every week, every day. They'll have different different stories to tell, and no business acquisition, is the same. They're all different. This is not a box. This is not a template. Definitely working with the right lawyer, having again the right accounting firm who's going to be helping you review the financials and going through due diligence, because there's financial due diligence and then there's legal due diligence. And then looking at it, your accountant who working with the right firm, they're going to be looking at the tax implications of the acquisition as well. And then we also recommend working with a transaction advisor. So a transaction advisor is typically someone who has the mergers and acquisition experience. They have valuation experience, they have experience raising capital, and they're sort of the quarterback. And they can keep all parties, working holistically. And sometimes it's a broker who works with buyers. Sometimes it's an M&A firm who has buy-side mandates. Sometimes it's an independent consultant, but really important to know that they have the skill set, they have the background, they understand valuations, they understand structuring deals, and they're really guiding you along the entire process.
Tell me about commercial ventures. Tell me about your business, how to get started, and what are some of the services you offer today?
Yeah, so I actually have two companies. One's a buy-side tech platform, and Commercial Ventures is the sort of manual version. And it started as a business brokerage in '96 by a lady named Pam Ryan. And I met Pam a few years back, and I took over the company in 2017. And at the time, it was a traditional business brokerage. But I found that businesses that we were getting introduced to and that were coming to us weren't as prepared for a lot of these conversations, and they just wanted to go to market. They wanted to sell yesterday, and we thought, we really needed to get in front of these people earlier. And so I actually pulled out of the business broker space and went down the road of exit planning. So I'm a certified exit planner, and I teach group courses and group sessions, and we also wanted to make services available to smaller businesses. So we pivoted, the buzzword today. We pivoted, and I, brought on transaction advisors who had M&A experience, and so now we work sort of on a hybrid fee model. Like typically, business brokers work on a success fee. There's an engagement fee, and then there's a success fee on the back end on the sale of the business. And we have restructured our model so that even a small Main Street business can get some guidance with a few hours of consulting a month. And we give them templates on how to do everything. Or if they're a bigger company and they do need the full service scope to go to market, then we can still do that as well. But really sort of an a la carte service depending on what you need. So we work with a lot of people who already have a buyer and they've gotten to the point of the letter of intent, and then they come to us and go, now what do I do? Yeah. Or they just can't meet eye to eye with a seller or a buyer, and they just need someone else to kind of help guide those discussions. We work with a lot of those people as well. And then we work with brokers who, so if somebody comes to us and they say, I just want a broker, we would help them find a broker. And that's mostly on the sell side. And then Village Wealth, the tech company I'm involved with, is for the buy side.
Look at that. You see how the transformation in the buying and selling of businesses have happened over the decades. It's going to continually transform. And for those of you business owners who are looking for maybe a growth in your business, you don't have to always grow organically. You can definitely do it by acquisition. I think these are the times where a lot of businesses, remember why I do this, is I think there's a lot of business owners who are good at their craft but not good at running businesses. When you don't run a business properly, you don't get full valuation of your company. And this is an opportune time for people like myself and other business owners to go out there and say, hey, I'm going to buy your business and you haven't done a good job, but I can do better, and I can get it at a cheaper price and get more market share. So this is a huge opportunity. Elizabeth, I want to thank you so much for joining me today.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for having me on.
If you have any other questions for Elizabeth, please leave them in the comments and we can have that discussion about them. We also have her website links here, and if you'd like to reach out to her directly, please do so. Thanks for watching and being part of the community. Take care.